Garland Nixon here. It's Tuesday, and we got the one and only Laith Marouf, my good friend from Beirut, and we got a lot to talk about and a lot to learn. Let's talk. Hello, all. Garland Nixon here. I'm still tweaking things. Just got off doing another show with Laith Marouf. Lots of terrible things going on in the Middle East. But the great thing that we have here is access to really good information, access to information that's not provided to you by any of the war states and the fascists involved. No, we got freepalestine.video. That's Laith's endeavor, and it's really, really awesome. Make sure you go to freepalestine.video and follow all of their good work while you're there. There are links to follow all of their social media stuff. So make sure you follow them on all of their social media accounts also. And most importantly, you can donate at freepalestine.video. Here it is, the holiday season. It's the end of the year. Perfect time for you to donate to freepalestine.video. And you can become a monthly subscriber there, and you can donate monthly. That's a great option. Even if it's not that much, you may say, well, I can only afford a few bucks. If you set it up for monthly, all of those things add together and they grow. So do the best you can. Make sure you donate. freepalestine.video. Share that on all your social media platforms, and make sure that you put a note when you share that, asking people to donate and asking people to follow them everywhere on social media. All right, Laith Marouf, lots of stuff going on. Let's start with Yemen. The U.S. and EU, et cetera, the NATO in a nutshell, because this is a NATO operation. They're not calling it a NATO operation, but everything all over the place. If it looks like NATO, it walks like NATO, and it's NATO. Okay. They're bombing Yemen. And the last I heard was Yemen had shot down, well, let's say an F-18 went down. According to the US, they shot it down accidentally themselves. I don't know. But apparently some US ships have seemed to have been hit. Well, the US says, no, we weren't hit. But apparently we're hearing nothing ever happened to them. They never got struck. No, nothing. And the Yemen Ansar Allah has been striking Israel pretty consistently with missiles that they can't seem to do anything to defend themselves against. Talk to me. What's happening with Yemen? What do we need to know about Yemen is in the battle, brother. They are in the fight. If nobody else is in the fight, damn sure Yemen is.
And that is good for all of humanity, actually, that Yemen is continuing to defend the Palestinian people and take their responsibility to stop genocide as prescribed in international law seriously. And of course, we saw the Zionist empire, what you would call NATO, attack Yemen yesterday. And while the attack is happening, the Yemenis responded with firing hypersonic missiles on the Zionist colony and hitting the Ben Gurion airport area, as well as engaging with the American aircraft carrier group that was in the Red Sea and chased them away. There was a statement from the Yemeni armed forces detailing the number of drones and missiles that they used to attack the aircraft carrier group. And now we hear that the Israelis and the whole Zionist empire is preparing to engage Yemen in a full war. And so the Yemenis are getting prepared for that. And we can see that they have targeted over the last week multiple Israeli air bases. And that's an indication that they want to somehow damage the air capabilities of Israel, and we should expect them to go on a full-scale kind of attack like that if there is a full-out war. We should also expect the Yemenis to be targeting American airfields in the region if as we will see, it's going to be a full engagement by the Zionist empire against them. Remember, like when the attacks on Lebanon were happening, and we were hearing the Israelis conducting 6,000 air raids in a span of 24 hours, that is an impossibility that Israel was doing it alone. That this was clear indication, the number, that all the Zionist empire air assets were engaged. And this war, since October 7, 2023, has been the whole imperial order fighting the Palestinian people and anybody that stands in solidarity with them. So it's not a war that Israel is fighting on its own. In fact, Israel has been defeated militarily since October 7th, and without the direct involvement of the military forces of the various components of the Zionist empire, the colony would have collapsed long ago. And so now, since things are out in the open fully, there's nobody anymore of the belligerents that is hiding their actions, including, let's say, the collaborations between the Wahhabi death squads and the Muslim Brotherhood and the Zionists and the Americans and so on in Syria and other places, even in Yemen, as we saw the Muslim Brotherhood being kind of activated last week with an attack on Taiz in Yemen. Luckily, the Yemeni forces were ready for them and defeated them. But what I'm trying to say here is that right now we are finally, everything is out in the open. Anyone that had any delusion or illusion before about what is this war about now understands what it is.
Yes, and that there was a discussion of what will happen if it becomes a regional war, and we discussed that. And here's the bottom line: it is a regional war. There we can talk about the level of regional war it becomes. You know what I mean? We can talk about whether or not where the fighting is or where the fighting isn't. But when Lebanon's been bombed, Syria is attacked, Iraq is attacked, Iran has been attacked, Yemen has been attacked. How can you have all of those countries that all have been attacked by Israel? And of course, the U.S. empire, the Zionist empire, whatever you want to call it, but all of them have been attacked. There's just no possibility that you could describe this as anything else but currently a regional war. It's just the level of fighting in the regional war that will go ahead.
It's funny that you mentioned this idea of regional war, because one of the stenographers that people call journalists from the West was interviewing the head of HTS, the gangster that's ruling Damascus right now. And in his interview, he stated that they took their action of attacking Damascus and taking down the Syrian government in order to prevent a regional war. In his own words, they did this so Israel doesn't have to deal with the whole axis of resistance going to war with it at the same time. And so now, while he's claiming that his actions were to stop the possibility of a regional war, you're right. And everybody that has any knowledge of what's happening on the ground and correct analysis will understand that we are in a regional war, more even so that we are in a world war. This war has engulfed the whole region. I mean, yes, there wasn't bombs falling on deliberately on the Saudi kingdom or what have you, but missiles were flying both ways over the Saudi airspace. American and other troops were flying out of their bases in the Gulf to attack targets in the axis of resistance. So the whole region was actually engaged in this war, from Turkey all the way to Yemen, and everything between it was part of the theater of activities. So in fact, this geographic span is larger than most of Europe in terms of geography size. So it is a world war. and it hasn't been described as such by any of the belligerents, but it is a reality, and it's affecting everything in the globe. It's affecting what's happening in the streets of New York in terms of demonstrations, what have you. It's affecting the prices of products in every corner, and it's forcing every country and state in the world to address the issues of what's happening here as number one priority on their agendas, as we see in the Security Council and other locations, international agencies, how the story of what happened in Gaza and what's happening in the whole region is dominating the international agenda. That means that we are all part of this war, and the populations in the West, we could see how they are now, being engaged directly in the story of what's happening on the ground here.
Let me put it another way. I'm going to throw this at you too. It's not really a regional war. Here's what I mean. If somebody comes to my house and says, Garland, I want your lawnmower and your family and your home and everything there, and I say no, and that person attacks me and I defend myself, is that a fight? No, a fight is two guys in a bar, they argue over some girl and they punch it out. That's a fight. But if you come to my house to rob me and I defend myself, that's not a fight. Here's my point. The Zionist empire is attacking the people of the Muslim world and the countries of the Muslim world. A fight implies that two sides have a difference and they're using physical violence to iron it out. It isn't really a war. It is an attack on people. It is an attack on civilians, and people are trying to defend themselves from the attack of the imperialists. So I think it's probably even wrong to describe it as a war. You're attacking innocent people. You're attacking countries that have a right to defend themselves. You don't have a right to fly over their airspace and bomb their cities. So as the Zionist empire attacks all people all over the place, they attack you, and then they say, we're at war. No, we ain't at war. You attacked me, and I have a right to defend myself.
Yeah, I mean, look, we are simultaneously back to the geopolitics of the 1700s in terms of how now we're back to the out-and-out piracy, banditry, and looting and mass genocide and mass rapes of nations as a form of building empires. And at the same time, we are seeing the Zionists insist that we get into a civilizational war. I mean, remember the Clash of Civilization by Huntington. The rest of the world for the last 30 years since Huntington's book came out have been attempting to avert a civilizational war and have been attempting to show everybody that, this is about imperialism, colonialism, and occupations and genocide and decolonization of nations in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. And the West was insisting in forcing us into a clash of civilization because it thought that this is the only way it can mobilize its own populations to accept in the 21st century outright genocide as a form of war. And this is what's happening. And it seems like, I think, after 30 years of resistance by the rest of the planet, the West got what it wanted. We are living this civilizational war, and you can see the clearest indication of that in the coming of the Wahhabi death squads into power in Damascus on the top of an Israeli and American tank, basically. And so right now, the West is purposefully ethnically cleansing Syria and demographically changing the nation to make it in the image of this civilizational clash that it wanted. Instead of the diverse Syria of many cultural groups and many sects and religions. Now we're having a new Syria being molded into this Wahhabi cult that is in clear dichotomy and opposite to what the West portrays itself as. Syria being multicultural and multi-religious is an antithema of this clash of civilization ploy that the West has been trying to get to. And if Syria doesn't survive these Wahhabi death squads, it will never be what it was again.
Let me ask you this. We're at the end of the year. Something we're going to get back to Syria. I got a lot of questions, but I would like to get your thoughts on this. I'm here in the US, and a lot of people here are looking around saying, we're witnessing an internal collapse. You know what I mean? I mean, if you look around economically, right, people can't afford stuff anymore. You know what I mean? Used to be, oh, yes, we live in the empire, and people were kind of deaf and dumb and blind to it because they got an advantage. You know, you live in the US, hey, you can have a good life and a good, nice car and home and all these things you had, some people had options for. That's going out the damn window now. And the media's collapsing here. 47% of like CNN, MSNBC, people that they could done with it, tired of it, right? This guy Luigi goes and shoots a member of the ruling elite, and the ruling elite's like, "Oh my God!" And the people are like, "Yay, good work." There's a and so the ruling elite, that the same ruling elite that's at war with Russia, they're at war with China. They're at war with everyone in the Muslim world, right? They're trying to hold down Africa, all of this stuff. But internally, things are coming unglued here. You know what I mean? And the people here are even pissed and furious at them. Like the empire is coming unglued externally and internally. That's to me, being here, seeing this, I'm like, the internal, they ain't gonna be able to keep this crap up. There's an internal collapse going on. And I fear, if that's the right word, Luigi, the violence of Luigi is the start. You know, it's the, what do they call it? You know, the shot heard around the world, right? The Fort Sumter, you know, sometimes there's a shot that's fired that starts a civil war kind of thing. And I've said all along, there ain't gonna be no civil war here. It'll be a lot closer to the French Revolution than it will, you know, the War of the 1860s. Your thought of the empire doing all this crazy stuff around the world as shit just falls apart here.
Yeah, look, remember the good old days of the 90s, early 90s, before the collapse of the Soviet Union and so on. Or you know, the West was selling itself as the multicultural, plural societies, and you know, we accept everybody and immigration, and look at what we're having. And it accumulated all of this with the appointment of Obama as the emperor, right? And what they were, you know, how they were degrading or denigrating other societies is claiming that other societies oppress their minorities and what have you, right? Well, now we have a 180 degrees flip. The West is telling everybody that their societies should be divided by ethnic and or religious lines, that China should be broken down to different ethnic groups and different religious groups. Russia should be the same. India, the Arabic world should be fragmented into neighborhoods even, okay? And so you could see this huge change and how this is playing out even inside the United States. Because, you know, you have a generation that grew up on this multiculturalism melting pot idea that is now faced with a new generation that was raised on this idea of, I don't know, the white genocide or the great displacement theory or whatever it is, and more ethnic-based or, you know, cultural-based identity as the state that should uphold that. So these contradictions are, as we see, number one, playing out in the streets of the West, and between generations. It's playing out between the different cultural groups that are in states like the US or France or the UK, the multicultural groups that are there. And the more that the West insists on creating clear ethnic states in the rest of the world, the more that is actually becoming more, what do you call it, attractive to people inside the population of the West. So you're having right now, we saw what just happened with, what's his name, this new Indian guy that Trump.
Oh yeah, Vivek Ramaswamy and Musk, yes.
And the H-1B visas, right? So they pumped up all this population in the U.S. That we would call "quote unquote" white, saying your jobs are being lost, and we got to close the borders and build as high a wall as you can, and we're going to stop immigration. And then they're coming to them saying, "Hey, we need we need more." So because we can't find somebody to hire with these qualifications amongst you guys, so it's these internal contradictions are gonna accelerate. Now, I don't want us to jump to the conclusion that the empire is just gonna collapse somehow, okay, and or that only with individual acts like Luigi's act, things are going to change by miracle, by themselves. No, if people are serious, Western civilians, citizens of countries that are part of this empire want to make change, then they have to start organizing. And that doesn't mean that you should go and organize a vote or something. No, but organizing to create structures for society that can free you up from the control of the state. And I don't mean people should carry arms. Maybe that's a different stage from now. But in the first stage, as we see, you need to create community sufficiency to be able to survive the pressures of the imperial order. We need to create mass media, as me and you are doing with these projects and so on. We're doing as much as we can, but it should become a mass media to be able to reach the vast majority of the population that is not happy with what the media is telling them, the mass media, and are thirsty for an alternative. You need to build education frameworks for our youth that are looking for the truth, that are seeking it and can't, and are working hard by themselves to find it on online sources. And we need to feed and make our population healthy. And basically, you have to follow the Black Panthers program, the social services program, and then have an armed wing ready if you get to that point. But first and foremost, we have to build these structures that free us from the hold of the state. And up until now, I don't see anyone that even took a first step towards that anywhere in the West. I wish the Black Panthers get reorganized and form something similar within the Black community, and or other groups find a way to do a multi societal organization like this that could trigger change and build healthy communities that can work for that change.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you on that one. And I think this also, at the beginning of the special military operation in Ukraine, there was the appearance that the empire was, looking good, looking strong. They had all this, and they were all going around saying, "See, we have united Europe, and we're all standing against this, and we've got the money." And and as time went on, you started to realize they can't win this. That more and more you started to realize they can't win this. They can do a lot of, in the long run, they're sure to lose. And now it is a disaster. It is my belief that the same thing's going to happen in the Middle East. They will look. It's like any fight. You know, you watch a fight and you see somebody get pummeled for a couple rounds. Then you see them get a couple more rounds where they win a couple rounds. Then they get pummeled for a couple rounds. But you can look at a fight a lot of times if you know, but prior you can say, well, that guy's tough, and ultimately that guy's going to lose, right? When I look at the Middle East, yeah, the empires got a couple rounds. They were getting pummeled, and now they're winning a couple rounds. They got Syria, and they did a couple of things. I just feel like in the long run that the Middle East is going to be another big part of the undoing of the empire, because I have a lot of respect for the Muslim civilization, and they don't stop ever, not ever. They're not going to one day say, okay, we lost. That's never going to happen. Like Yemen, it's never going to happen. And the internal and external weakening of the empire is going to cost them. I just feel like in the long run, let's talk about Syria real quick. Your thoughts. We discussed this, and I've come to this conclusion. There will be an armed resistance in Syria at some point. I believe that will rise. Do you think I'm wrong?
Well, it's already rising, actually. You're right. And there was a statement that got published yesterday, titled Declaration Number 1, by a new Syrian Resistance National Liberation Front. And they were using in their language words like Zionism, Wahhabism, imperialism, colonialism, and it was very anti-Israel, anti-American. And so it's clear that it's happening. They set up multiple ambushes for the Wahhabi death squads in the mountain ranges on the coast of Syria. As at least 40 of those Wahhabi death squads have been killed over the last few days in these ambushes. But simultaneously, at the same time, around 200 to 400 Syrians are being murdered or lynched publicly every day. And these are numbers equivalent to what was happening in Gaza. So what's happening in Syria is horrific, honestly.
Another genocide.
It's another genocide. And as a Syrian, I feel at this moment that Syrian lives are even less worth in the eyes of the West than Palestinian lives, because we still see coverage of what's happening in Gaza, even though it's warped and so forth in the Western media, but nobody's covering what's happening in Syria. And yesterday in Ma'lula, which is one of the villages, the last places on earth that speak the language of Jesus Christ, the Aramaic language, the Wahhabi death squads walked in and at gunpoint forced all the villagers out into a march on their feet to the Lebanese border. This in Ma'lula is the oldest church on earth, because the first Christians that escaped from Palestine, followed by the Roman troops, the first churches they built were at the foothills, basically, of the Golan Heights and the Karamun Mountains in Ma'lula before they walked into Damascus. And, thousands of Syrian soldiers and Hezbollah fighters were martyred to liberate Ma'lula the first time when the Wahhabi death squads occupied it in 2013. To see it right now fall into these Wahhabi death squad's hands and them filming themselves denigrating the sacred churches and denigrating Christianity and the people of Ma'lula, while the West is actually cheering this, is heartbreaking. And, up until now, something like 250,000 Shia Syrians had been exiled and crossed into Lebanon. These are just the Shia. And probably right now, the number of Christians that crossed into Lebanon is reaching that number also, around 200-something thousand. And the Alawi sect is is getting slaughtered, the most. They're getting the most hate and attention from the HTS and Wahhabi death squads in general. And by the way, these attacks on the Alawi sect is destabilizing Turkey. Many of your viewers would not know this, but 1/3 of the Turkish population is actually Alawi Muslim. 30 somewhat million Alawis are Turkish citizens. So the majority of Alawis in the world are actually not in Syria, they are in Turkey. And they have been oppressed for a long time under the Muslim Brotherhood rule right now of Erdogan, but not fully. But we saw how part of their oppression was revealed during the aftermath of the earthquake on the border between Turkey and Syria 2 years ago, because they live in that region close to the borders of Syria, and they received the least aid from the Turkish government since the earthquake. And now we've saw statements coming out of these villages and towns and cities in this area, the border area with Syria, north of and the coast of the Mediterranean, that have made statements warning Erdogan and the Turkish government that the continuation of the slaughter and genocide of Alawis in Syria will lead to armed rebellion in this whole region that they occupy in Turkey, and that they will be forming militias to send into Syria to defend the Alawis. This is very dangerous for Turkey, because it's one thing to have the Kurds rebel, okay, in Turkey. It's something like 10 or 12 million. So it's not 30%, it's 10%, let's say, of the population. And also it's an ethnic group that's separate from the majority Turks. But the Alawis in Turkey are actually Turks. They're not like Arabic, they're not Kurds, and they have a huge territory, and it's bordering on Syria, and a rebellion of the Alawi population will affect even the major American air base in the area there in Turkey. So the effects of what's happening in Syria will spill all over the place. This is not a total win for the empire. It's actually opening up many dangers that they haven't calculated. And I don't think they had in their mind that the Alawi population in Turkey could go into a revolt.
The other part of it is this. Look, let's say the Kurds are 10%, the Alawites are 30%. You're up to 40% of Turkey right now. You cannot have a stable country if 40% of the people in your country, even if it was 40 different groups and each of them was 1%, when it all makes up 40% of your country is in unrest. So what this looks to do, that's why I keep saying, it's horrible what they're doing, these genocides. This stuff's going to come back to haunt them bad. And at this point, the government of Turkey would have to be worried, because if 40% of your people are unhappy, that's civil war numbers there. That's the kind of numbers for a civil war.
Oh yes, and the rest of the population are also divided between Erdogan's party and the other opposition parties. So things are it's a tinderbox right now in Turkey because of this overstretch of imperial urges that Erdogan has. One more thing that we can think about here is that, look, the majority of Syrians, 60%, something like, or more like 70% are Muslim. But actually, 60% of the population are Sufi Muslim, meaning mystic. Okay, they don't belong to the Orthodox sects of Islam. The majority of Syrians are, those whirling dervishes. Have you ever saw those videos of people that go in circles, dancing to music until they reach ecstasy to speak to God? This is the majority of Muslims in Syria. This is true of Turkey itself. Outside the Alawi sect, even in the Sunni population of Turkey, the vast majority are Sufi mystics. And look at what's happening in Syria. We are hearing, all of us, about attacks on the Alawi shrines, attacks on churches, and so on. But actually, the vast majority of attacks on religious sites in Syria are happening right now against mosques. These Wahhabi death squads are walking into the mosques, which are practically, 80% of them are run by different Sufi sects, and are lynching the preachers, taking down any decorations in the mosque that they deem heretic, and appointing these Wahhabi preachers in them. This will not bode well with the vast majority of Muslims in Syria. And one other thing that we should say about Syria, look at what's happening with the new government, quote unquote government. The appointments that are happening, there is right now Turkish citizen that is the Minister of Defense. It's not even like a Syrian born in Turkey or a Syrian with dual citizenship. No, a Turkish citizen is now appointed as the Minister of Defense. They've just released names of all these new generals that they appointed in the Syrian military. People that have never been through the officer's corps, didn't get raises or anything, just appointed. All of these Wahhabi death squad leaders, Turks, Jordanians, Saudis, Uyghur, Uzbek, these are now the generals in the Syrian military. And the Turkish government just announced that it will be the one issuing citizenship cards and passports and registering marriages and births and deaths on behalf of the Syrian government. If I want to right now renew my passport, and luckily I don't need to renew it anytime soon, the Syrian, and I probably will keep it as a souvenir from this old era, I will have to go to a Turkish embassy and wait for the Turkish government to issue me my papers. So Turkey right now is giving citizenship to anyone it wants to, and denying citizenship in Syria to anyone it doesn't want to. So we will see a demographic change campaign that we haven't seen the likes of since World War II and World War I. Since those moments of vast changes of populations, force at the gun that we saw during those world wars, we haven't seen like that anything until now in Syria.
Wow. There's something else I wanted. Oh, let me ask you this. Another thing about Syria, for any government to survive, and I use the word government guardedly when I talk about these people, they have to provide for their people, food, things like this. Okay. The U.S. and Turkey have been looting the oil, the wheat, all this kind of stuff. So now this so-called government is in power. That means they need the oil and the wheat and all of these things to make this thing that is supposedly a country happen. U.S. ain't giving up that oil. Criminals, stick-up artists, once they stick you up, they ain't giving you your wallet back. They're keeping your wallet. They're a stick-up artist. They stole it. They don't give back the wallet. U.S. ain't giving back the oil, the wheat. I would suspect that Turkey, I had heard at times Erdogan's family members have been involved in some of this economic chicanery, that rather than say, okay, well, now you got a government and you can have your wheat and oil back, that it'll get even worse. That now the criminals and stick-up artists will, if anything, they'll fight amongst each other. Some people rob a bank, and then the 5 bank robbers get together and fight over who gets the biggest share of the stolen loot. I suspect that's what we're looking at now. Laith.
Yeah, look, Syria was the most industrially advanced country in the region before 2012. It had cornered all the clothing market, all the medium and small electronics market, and all the food, processed and non-processed food market in the whole region. And today, obviously, during the war, Erdogan and his son looted all the factories north of Aleppo, actually dismantled the factories one by one and moved their whole machinery into the south parts of Turkey and rebuilt these industrial zones. And now you will go anywhere around this region and it's everything Turkish. There was nothing like that here in Lebanon, for instance. 10 years ago, it was all Syrian products. Now it's Turkish products. Well, with the collapse of the Syrian state completely, the market of Syria itself, which was still self-sufficient on all these things, is now flooded with Turkish products untaxed because there's no border. You're within one day, you would walk into any store in Damascus within one day of the collapse of the state, and the stores were already flooded with Turkish products. So even if, let's say, this new quote-unquote government wanted to build itself without the resources that are being looted right now, it will have to depend on taxes. Well, Turkey doesn't want it to tax its products. So Turkey wants to flood the Syrian market with its products. So the government has zero right now income except from the handouts directly from its masters. And this is probably one way to keep them in check, is that they can't even collect any taxes. They can't sell any resources. They just have to wait for the handout from master in the White House. The other thing that we can think about the economy of Syria right now is that you're right. The Americans, Trump said that we will be looting this oil. We're not going to give it back. and Trump doesn't lie for the most part when he says stuff like this. He's very blunt cowboy, and that's it. You got the cowboy said, I've taken it and I'm not giving back. So what is these Wahhabi death squads going to do? They're going to do nothing. And I don't think Turkey will fight the U.S. over the oil and gas. It has now the whole coast of Syria under its control. It has the whole route of trade that's going to have to come through Syria, including oil, under its control. Any pipelines that are going to be built, it's going to make billions out of them. It's going to loot the oil and gas resources of Syria that are in the Mediterranean that haven't been tapped for 20 years because of the war. A thing about that actually annoyed me the most reading the last few weeks Western media when it's covering Syria. Remember, for like more than a decade, they would tell us the Syrian regime or Assad's dictatorship, right? Well, now all this Western media is talking about President Jolani. Not anymore a regime, not anymore a dictator. While this guy is telling us there will be no election in Syria for 4 years. Jolani just said there will be no election for 4 years. And he's being called the president of Syria, who nobody elected, who isn't even a Syrian. It's a crazy world we live in today.
Add this. What we've heard for the last several years is, Iran is oppressing people because it makes them women wear head coverings. That's unthinkable. We've got to have protests. We've got to go to the UN. They must be dealt with and stopped from this evil transgression of forcing women to wear headscarves. One of the first things Jelani said is women have to wear head coverings. So for some reason, if the Iranians do it in their country, the legitimate country, say, hey, this is what we're going to do, this is our culture, they got a right to do that. If whether you like it or not, it's in your business. No, we've got to overthrow the government. Now we put in ISIS members, and when they do it, all of a sudden, no protests, no pushback. The contradiction of empire, these actions that they're taking. You know, hey, Russia can't invade Ukraine when we overthrow the government and put a bunch of Nazis in charge. They're not allowed to do that on their border. Israel can attack everybody on their border nonstop. The contradictions are getting so obvious.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I mean, brown women are like a football, but being kicked back and forth. One day take off your hijab, another day put on your hijab, and all in the name of freedom. It's yeah, the matrix. There's a lot of glitches in it right now, and that's great for people to see, to wake up from the matrix. One thing that we should also take from all of this is that it seems like the empire is desperate. It doesn't care anymore fully and plays this propaganda game, but doesn't really believe in it. And the main tactic that it's using is outright genocide to maintain itself. And so we saw the genocide for 15 months in Gaza broadcasted, and it didn't trigger any change or revolt or whatever it is in Western societies. So that emboldened the West to go with the biggest terrorist attack in history, that pager and walkie-talkie terrorist attack, something like 12,000 injured and people, all in the span of minutes. And then we saw that didn't garner any reaction from the Western populace. So that emboldened the West to commit what they're committing right now in Syria: outright invasion by Wahhabi death squads and mass population transfers and demographic change all out in the open, and desecration of the holiest of holy sites in Christianity, and digging people's graves up, and all in the open. So, and still Western populace hasn't reacted in a way that threatens the elite. So I fear for Yemen, not that Yemen is gonna fall apart, but I fear what the West will do to Yemen. If it got away with all of that, what more can it do that is part of its shock and awe policy against the axis of resistance? So I think the attacks on Yemen that will come are going to open a new stage and show us a new face that we haven't seen, an uglier even face than we've seen yet from the West.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think that like I said, I look at a lot of stuff internally. Man, this place is coming apart. I think one of the things that I interpret, believe it or not, I'll make a point to you. One of the things that I interpret as a disruption here was, in fact, the Trump election. Now, I ain't saying Trump's going to do anything good or bad, good or whatever. I'm saying there were people, and you heard this on the streets, they were so sick and tired and angry of everything going on with their government, including Gaza, that a lot of people stayed home. I talked to a friend who's 30 years old, and he says, oh yeah, everybody I know, he was from New York, everybody I know, all the people I know, they're all they didn't vote for the Democrats. I said, why? He said, Gaza. So it did have a pronounced effect on politics, in that the Democrats got slaughtered and everybody's running away from the mainstream media. It has a pronounced effect. Now, here's the other part of it. So now Trump wins. He ain't going to do nothing different. And so that's when I think you're going to see, it's one thing it's like the UK. The UK was pissed with the Tories. They got Starmer. They got the same thing. I think when you really start to see the disruption in a society, when a society really starts to become unglued, what did James Baldwin said? The worst thing a society can create is a man who's got nothing left to lose, right? Once you voted for the Tories, then you put Starmer in, and it's just as bad. You can't go back to the Tories. The UK is going to come unglued because those people have nothing left to lose. Once there's a phase, it's like, oh, this is terrible. Let's try that. And there's nothing else to go back to now, But the thing that brought you what you're getting, that's when you get some kind of hellified chaos internally. I think that's the direction we're going to 2025. When people wake up and they're like, well, hell, we just got more of the same. Look, something I was just talking with someone about. All this censorship was Russian censorship, and we can't say anything because it'd be Russian propaganda. We got to censor you on Twitter. We got to censor you on censor everywhere because of Russian propaganda. Okay, Trump comes in. Hey, we've got to stop all this censorship. You know what they're going to do. Oh, with Trump, you're criticizing, you're an anti-Semite because you're criticizing Israel. You're criticizing our policy. And so now it'll be the same censorship, if not worse, but the new argument for it, it won't be you've got to be censored because of Russia. It's going to say you're aiding and abetting terrorism, so therefore you lose all your rights. You're aiding terrorism, all your constitutional rights. And that's when people are going to start to say, well, wait a minute, we were sick and tired of being sick and tired, and we voted for something new, and we're getting the same, if not worse, in a lot of ways. That's when shit's coming on. I'm telling you, I'm here. People outside of the empire cannot see the level of dysfunction. The place is coming to pieces. The wars that they're fighting, they'll be lucky to last internally to get through the crap that they're starting externally.
Yeah, you're definitely right, Garland, there. I mean, the election of Trump was an indication of these glitches in the system and or the last-ditch efforts of the elite to save themselves somehow or distract somehow the population. And we can see already how this is backfiring. So they pumped up the population about, the whiteness of America and the threat of population transfers and immigration and so forth. And then the first thing that they do is this, work visa program. That
the rich want immigration. The rich want lower price for labor.
That's
They're
it.
the richest man in the world. The richest man in the world wants to pay as little as he can for labor. And you're being had if you think he wants anything else. They ain't going to do that. Look, all this business, we're going to deport for. No, they're not. They're paying. They got gigantic. What do you think Monsanto and these countries that have these gigantic farms, who's going to pick the grapes? They're not going to. It's all a fraud. Anyway, go ahead.
Yes. And you could see how it backfired on them. And the crowd that they gathered around them was fighting them back around it on this issue. And then you saw supposedly the savior of free speech, Musk, going on a rampage of demonetizing and taking away the blue check of like tens of activists that were part of his team, part of the people that were arguing for Trump. And this is where the contradiction lies. He is a capitalist. Yes, he's a white supremacist, but he's a capitalist, and there's a limit. The money is the limit of his white supremacy. It's
green supremacy. He's a green supremacist. This has nothing to do with white.
Exactly. It's like the minute it's going to affect his dollar, he's going to throw it away. So this is interesting, and it must have woken up some people, and to understand this idea that race doesn't exist. The race traders are all over us, and they'll sell us and buy us for $1. Whether you're white or black, there's a race trader amongst you always that loves the dollar. And so maybe this is going to awaken some class awareness from the mass numbers of working class that are white, that are starving and have problems with their health and education and are questing better life and are being manipulated by the elite to hate their neighbors from other cultures that have nothing to do with their suffering. So we see the maneuverability spaces that are there for the elite in the West are shrinking because they keep on burning bridges, burning plots, and exposing them over and over that they can't repeat the same thing that they did 20 years ago or 10 years ago, and there's no more moves for them left. And I think partially, we should be optimistic, yes, but also we should be worried that this is getting the elite in the West, in the empire, to become more and more vicious. And we see that playing out in the killing fields in Western Asia. And we will be seeing it more and more so in the streets of the capitals in the empire as the populations become more restless, as more sectors of society start revolting in different ways, even if it's not armed. And we can see how already the repression is coming en masse. The defunding of universities that allow any criticism of Israel, for instance, that's going to collapse the whole education system. Defunding of any artist that does anything, this is going to collapse the quality of art in the West. So already, like most of the world is, by the way, me and you, we grew up listening to Western English music. Well, I'm shocked, but my kids are listening to Korean music all the time. They don't know what is happening in the song, but this is true for the most of the world. And so the power of even culture is dissipating of Western culture. Nobody is like as invested in listening and to Western music and watching it. Anyways, this is all because of the mistakes that the elite are doing. And maybe they're happy that it's Korea that's capturing this cultural market of the world that is still part of the empire, but it's still not really, Koreans are there by accident.
Did you see what happened in South Korea? Are you familiar with what happened recently in South Korea, where the president, the puppet of the U.S., tried to basically declare martial law and become a military dictator? And when I covered this, when Jake Sullivan was asked about that, he avoided the question. They said, "Did you know that? See that coming?" He goes, "Well, I can't say that I saw that there was going to be that and that it was going to be overturned in 24 hours." Like, he just was like, it's so, you ever see anybody, you ask them a question and they're like, well, and you can see their misogyny answer. Bottom line, they tried to reinstall a military dictatorship in South Korea, and the people of South Korea fought it off. And now the people, once they fought it off, it can never go back to what it was, because they've lived a military dictatorship run by the U.S. now. Now, this South Korea thing is going to fall apart on them, because when they're able to have another election, it's going to go completely in the other direction. They have made a disastrous mistake in South Korea.
Yeah, no, I don't know if you read this detail, but the president basically had a special forces unit buy off the black market North Korean military fatigues to dress up to and do a false flag attack supposed on him before this or during when he called in the martial law. So he was trying to pretend that North Korea was trying to take him out, and he got, this whole special force got caught, and now there's a court case about it. You see, like, yes, probably our viewers don't know this, or some of them are too young to remember this, but South Korea didn't have any elections until I think 1989 or 1990, the first election. It was a dictatorship. Similarly, that happened in Spain. Spain didn't get their democracy until what's his name died. The dictator Franco, right? So these countries are all nascent democracies that even their democracies is theatrics, and we're only allowed to have this theatric democracies after the collapse of the Soviet Union. When the West didn't anymore fear a socialist getting into power through democracy in the West, in these countries that the West controlled. But yeah, like the whole world is living the same story, Garland. And you look at that, what's happening in Argentina, what's happening in Bolivia, what's happening in the Sahel. All of these are related, and it's all symptoms of the collapse of both the military power of the empire and its cultural power. And the elite in the West have no choices but to either agree to equality with the rest of humanity or go buck wild, vicious, as we see in the killing fields in West Asia.
Yeah, you're right. I just realized within a 2-week period, the U.S. empire installed a dictatorship, a brutal military dictatorship in Syria, and tried to install a brutal military dictatorship in South Korea. And might I add, they've already have a brutal military dictatorship in Ukraine. So it's, if you want to know what the ruling elite of the US in Europe, if you want to understand what their politics really are, what they see as the ideal government for a country, all you have to do is look, what did they do in Ukraine? What did they put in Syria? These people, the foundation of them is an authoritarian military dictatorship where you do what you're told or you get shot. And that's, I mean, it's a perfect example, a mirror of who these people are. They have a country and they can put in any kind of government they choose. And every single time they put in a brutal military dictatorship, that means that we are actually living in a brutal military dictatorship, which I already know, but a lot of Americans don't know yet. But more and more.
One thing that you forgot there is Romania. What happened there?
And they tried to do it in Georgia.
And they tried to do it in Georgia. Yes. So it's really ridiculous, the amount of things. And one other thing I would say about Ukraine, there was a priest in the made-up breakaway Orthodox Church of Ukraine that the Ukrainian fascists created when they expelled all the preachers that belong to the Orthodox Church in Russia. Yesterday made a public statement, is a state official priest calling on the Ukrainian people to convert to Judaism because that is their sure way to win the war against Russia. If they're Jews, God would love you. This is one of the main supposed Orthodox preachers. Most probably he's the Mossad agents that got appointed as a priest, just like the Mossad agents that claim to themselves to be Muslim that led ISIS, like al-Baghdadi. So this is how ridiculous today's world is, and I wasn't that surprised, honestly, when this preacher called on Ukrainians to convert to Judaism. Maybe I'll end it on this, and we can say Happy New Year to everybody after this thought. But this thought has been whirling in my head for a couple of weeks now. You look at throughout history, every nation, every people thought of themselves as the best, and looked at some other people as less than them at some point. Okay. But I've never seen in all of human history a nation that says somebody else is better than me and I am less than them. And today, we have the whole quote-unquote Western civilization, all the whiteys basically, standing in line and saying Jews are better than me. They are the chosen people and I am less than them. I will burn my country to save the Jewish country. We've never seen something like this in all of human history. It is so bizarre. The psychosis that has now inhabited Western civilization. Unbelievable.
Yeah, well, you got to add this to it. And here's the great irony. These are the people that have oppressed the Jews. These are the people that for like 1,000 years committed pogroms. They would have like a drought and they'd be like, hey, we didn't get much rain. What do you think we should do? Let's just go kill a whole community full of Jews and then maybe God will make it rain on us, right? The people that slaughtered Jews, the Nazi Holocaust, whatever you call it, was like the final, not final, but the crescendo of Western anti-Semitism. They had been building up to this for years. There was all kind of anti-Semitism in the US and racism. So isn't it this whole irony that the people who killed and slaughtered the Jews for centuries, blamed them for everything, hated them beyond belief, and now they say, we've got to protect the Jews because they're the chosen people or whatever the hell, might I add. And what was their solution after they slaughtered the Jews? We said, hey, we got an idea. What's that? Zionism. We'll create a state for them way over there and get them the hell out of here. Basically, they said, ship the Jews out because we love them so much. So they ostracized them, threw them out of their part of the world, and put them into another part of the world where they'd apparently be safe from us. Because the argument is, hey, the Jews aren't safe here amongst us, which you could argue, yeah, they were pretty spot on with that. They're not safe amongst us because we've been killing them for 1,000 years and slaughtering them. Let's send them over there, and then we'll execute our imperialist strategy through them, which will make them even less safe there. I mean, the irony of all of this, and here's my next question. How's that working out for the Jews? People all over the world now hate Israel, and I suspect and fear that at some point there will be violence. The U.S. is going to fall apart. It's going to fall to hell. And you know what they're going to do? They're going to go back to what they did for the last 1,000 years. The U.S. is going to fall. It's going to hell because of the ruling elite. But at some point, Americans are they'll like look at the Biden administration and say, wow, it's full of Jewish people. They'll look at our government and say, wow, our government's full of Jewish people and everything is falling apart, and they'll blame them. Right? And the ruling elite here, the white guys or whoever, black, you name it, they'll join in. They'll be like, yeah, Elon Musk. And he's going, well, I guess if they blame us, they'll cut our heads off. So we better join in. Yeah, it's the Jewish people. They'll use the Jewish people for slaughter them, send them over there for imperial machinations. And then when everything goes to hell here, they will join in the chorus to blame the Jewish people right here. And they will once again be the scapegoats for the ruling elite here.
Oh, yes. This is the oldest trick in the book for Western elite. And they did that, as you aptly pointed, multiple times over the centuries. Anytime the serfs were going to revolt, they would blame they tell them it was the Jewish tax collector, not the king, that you should be killing. And that's what's going to happen. And I mean, honestly, this time, it's not only the elite in the West that will be to blame. The Jewish elite themselves put their people in this position, sold their soul and their the religion to imperialism. And so I always worry about people, and it's okay for us to criticize any religion we want to. This is in the freedom of speech. Nobody is supposed to be forced to say, I love Islam, or not have criticism to the religion. But we have to always care for people. So anyone that follows the Jewish faith is not, or Muslim faith is not automatically bad, and or Christian faith or being.
My brother was Jewish. He converted in the military, and he was far more radical against Israel than both of us put together.
Yes,
the way, but he was really furious at Israel.
Yeah, and so what we should be very careful about, and I think this is where the Zionists have put the people, the Jewish people, or people that follow the Jewish religion, into mortal danger.
Yes,
with what they did right now, and it's gonna take generations and centuries for them to be forgiven for what they just conducted in Gaza and what they continue to conduct as genocide in the region here.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. It'll be the results will be wrought upon both the Zionists and the Jewish people who are in the streets right here marching against it. They will, all suffer, and that's a terrible thing that's going to happen. But it's going to be brought about. This empire is a disaster. At any rate, Laith Marouf, let's we got to get ready to run. But let everybody know about your briefly. Let everybody tell people about freepalestine.video. Tell them about the website. Yeah, we've talked, hey, you need to go there, or you need blah, blah, you need to donate. Yeah, that's all important. But what the heck is freepalestine.video? What's on it?
Yes, so we've got reporters on the ground in the West Bank, in Lebanon, in Palestine. We're producing daily reports showing you what's happening in all those fronts. We're producing weekly shows, including Wartime Cafe, interviewing personalities in the region, and prisoners of war, interviewing former Palestinian prisoners, all in English. And so we're trying to reach the global audience. It's all volunteer and community driven. We don't take any money from any agencies, any NGOs, any governments. It's our donors, our viewers that are empowering us. And our position is very clear. We support liberation and only that. And so you may hear me comment on a lot of issues on here, but Free Palestine TV is very dedicated and sticks to the facts and the ground stories that nobody else is covering. We're also translating all these videos from the military operations of the Axis of Resistance. There's a whole archive of them since last year that you can watch. We're coming out with close to 300 videos a month, up to basically 10 videos a day. Nobody else is doing this work. And we're not going and covering the story that everybody's covering. We're trying to show people the things that fall through the crack and are seldomly reported.
Do you have you guys? You don't have stuff that people can order yet, do you? Like hats or shirts or something, stickers with FPTV and your logo. Do you have anything like that yet?
Not yet. We're gonna start working on it. We're gonna have a huge ad campaign and membership campaign in January. We're just letting everybody go through their holidays. And please, visit again in January. We should have all of that ready for our viewers.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you very much. And everybody, don't forget when you go there, share that. Share. You saw it's a great website. Tremendous work they've done. This is not some just little, WordPress, basically, a document. This is a major website with brilliant work and really, really high-tech work that's been done. Share it on all your social media platforms. Donate. Make sure you request, when you share it on your social media platforms, you request that other people donate also, so we can keep this kind of important work going. The mainstream media is crumbling, and people like Laith and I and everyone in the chat, we are the people that are making things work, and we're going to continue to fight the good fight. Laith Marouf, thanks a lot, and we'll talk again next week.
See you soon.
All right. Thanks a lot, everybody. Don't forget, share this on all your social media platforms. And it is, wow, what time is it? What time is it in Beirut?
Oh, it's 9:45.
Okay. We got a new year coming up soon here and there, and we're going to do big work for the new year. Thanks a lot, everybody. We're out.